This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome to the Elevate Construction Podcast. This is Rena, the producer, and this is the 5th of 9 podcast episodes recorded in 2017 after implementing Lean on a project. You will hear the voices of Jake Smalley, Jake Pardoon, and Jason Schroeder as they reflect on the successes and failures of their experiment. Enjoy.
All right, everybody, we've got Jake Pardoon and Jake Smalley and Jason Schroeder here to do podcast number, I think it's 5. Anyway, we're going to talk about sustaining the culture. This will be a really quick podcast. Every time I say that, it ends up being 30 minutes. But anyway, so basically, once we've gone through all of the things that we talked about, where we have incentive and survival, where we're using the art of attack, we've written everything into the contracts, and we're winning over the workforce, and we're just heading down a good path, we have to sustain the culture. And so Jake is going to add spice. The Jakes are going to add spice to this by interrupting and giving stories and making it lively. I'm going to start off with just a couple of things. So once you have everything set up, people need to be reminded more than they need to be taught. Some people need to be taught, but basically the key to sustaining a culture is to make sure that people are reminded on a daily, weekly, monthly basis what's expected. I think that one of the biggest things that, and I don't think we have covered the trade partner grading system, so we'll just go ahead and do that one as the first one, if that's okay. But not only do we have a zero tolerance policy for certain things, and we have a culture of discipline where people actually have to perform, we have what's called this trade partner grading system. And so what we do is every trade partner has their own grade, and they're graded on certain key things that are not subjective. It's actual hard data. What I mean by that is, like, if it's important to the job site team to keep doing the morning huddles, that's a grading criteria. Another grading criteria would be, cleaning. Another grading criteria would be, did the trade partner have to be shut down? Another grading criteria would be, how many outstanding rolling completion list items do you have? Do you turn in your weekly safety walks? There are certain behaviors that we need to sustain the culture that we've put onto that grading system, and we grade on a weekly basis, and that gets sent out to the owners, vice presidents, project managers, all the big dogs with all of these trade partners, and that gets sent out weekly. And so that's a really visual tool where we what do you call that, where we measure results to try and maintain certain behaviors.
So I'm going to interject here. So this is a good story. In Tucson, we have it's like a big little town. So you've got a bunch of good old boys that have went to high school together. They're all in different trades now, but they're all friends. They get beer on the weekend, whatever you call it. So they like to hang out. There is some funny things that happen on our project, though. One day, one of our trade partners got a bad grade, and there was some things that they were required to do, and they weren't doing it. And there had been emails sent out for them to do it, but they had neglected to do it. Well, one of our other trade partners called this guy up and said, "Hey, Steve."
Oh, don't say people's names.
I can say names.
All right, go
I
ahead.
can say names.
All right, fine. Go ahead.
Sorry. John Smith, Steve, Bob, Phil, go whatever. So John calls Steve and says, "Hey, Steve, you got an F this week on the trade partner grading sheet." I can't remember what we
TPGS.
And Steve didn't like that very much. About 10 minutes later, as a matter of fact, Steve walked into the trailer all huffy and puffy, wanted to know how to bring his grade up because he'd never ever had an F in his life. Now, the funny thing about that is it kind of makes a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. We can wait another 2 or 3 minutes for you to think about it.
They're competitive. Yeah, we can wait another 3 minutes.
Just kidding.
They're competitive, meaning it's going to do a couple different things. So you're either going to have the guys who are like, well, I just want to keep up with the Joneses, or there's going to be the other guys who rub it in their faces like this story. And it was just pretty comical, but it happened over and over again on the project.
It's very, and you know what's funny about what Jake just said? This has happened 3 or 4 times where somebody notices that they didn't get a good grade, and they'll drive 2 or 3 hours over here to have a talk and say, how can I get my grade up? The other thing, and I'm not sure I'd recommend this everywhere, and you have to be careful, especially if you're grading yourself, but I copied the owner on all of these, so people were very interested in getting good grades. So that was one of the biggest things. I know when I was doing, so as the superintendent of the job, I was like, how do I get everybody to turn in their weekly foreman safety audits? It was like, you got to call people and track them down or remind them or whatever. So finally I was like, forget this. So I just put it on there on the grading sheet, and I scaled it. I weighted it to where like that was a big score. You really had to turn that in if you really wanted to get a good grade. And then finally they started pouring in, and I get stacks of weekly foreman safety audits on my desk because they were getting graded. So just a piece of advice: if you have a culture that you're wanting to shoot for that has certain behaviors, and those behaviors are sometimes hard to manage for you or for us in the past, consider making it a part of the weekly trade partner grading. Anyway, fair enough? I like it. Okay. Another thing that we did, which had its place in time, we didn't do it right at the end for the last couple of months because things were really winding down and we didn't have a need, but we used to have a weekly, it wasn't a sub meeting really, but it was a weekly operational superintendents meeting. Really is like, let's talk.
Okay, the truth about that is, Jason,
What?
you were buying lunch every Friday for all the superintendents, and then after Taylor told you couldn't buy any more lunch because you blow the budget, we had to stop that, right?
Well,
now really what happened?
No, not exactly. So I stopped buying lunch. A couple of people didn't show up. I got pouty and canceled it. So
I'm just sorry.
Anyway, yeah. You know what? We're just going to keep going. Anyway, so, but when we had that meeting before I started my pallet, the trade partners would come in there and they would make suggestions about how the site should be operated. They would reinforce the zero tolerance policy rule. They would reinforce the delivery rules around the hoist. They would suggest other items to keep control of the site so that other contractors didn't affect each other. And it really just ended up being a good thing. And because they owned it, just like Jake was talking about in some previous podcasts, it really ended up sustaining some of the behaviors that we wanted to support the culture, because they bought into it, and on a weekly basis we checked in with them and got the feedback from the group. And if there were any problems, we said, hey guys, what's working, what's not working, and we would fix those things. And so Jake is right. We did stop feeding them. We had a little bit of spotty attendance, but it was a good time to stop them because we were 2 months out.
One thing you did continue after on it, and you continued after that, was the continual open-ended follow-up. So, like you said, you were asking them for the suggestions. We weren't just out there dictating. You were out there asking each subcontractor, foreman, each worker, laborer, out there for suggestions on what we could do better, how we could improve, how the site needed to change, how access needed to change, how we could make their lives easier, better, so they can continue to improve. And as that continued, as that evolved, it became, there wasn't as much crickets when you'd ask that question. More people got involved because their voice was heard. Not every culture has that, leave your title at the door at a meeting. And for some of these guys, it was the first time they had been able to speak up into a meeting. And it's kind of hard to get beyond that at some points. But as you continue to open it up and make sure that they're being heard and that their voice is understood, and we're making those changes as they see fit, as best that we can do. Sometimes you have to tell people no, and that's just as a part of the game, but at least their voice is heard and we take it into consideration. And then that continues to perpetuate that culture that you're looking for, that open end, that lean process, the safety, everything continued to evolve and continue to grow. And once you got that snowball going down the mountain it was going by itself.
I like that. Thank you, Jake, for the input. And you guys need to. So there's some things that we tried that did work and didn't work. To tag on to what Jake Pardoon was saying is, when we were transitioning from Brent and Jason doing a lot of the huddles, Jake Smalley was doing a lot of them, but we had Jake Pardoon, some of the engineers starting to do the huddles, and we really wanted to create a system where everybody was comfortable doing it, kind of balance out the schedule a little bit. And again, you guys can make fun of me if you want. Of course, I know you will. I think
Jason just didn't want to do it.
yeah, no, that's not true. I was busy. Look, lady. Okay, so I used to send out YouTube. So a couple things. I used to send out YouTube videos on a daily basis. I think I got up to 55 of them talking about ideas, because everybody was great at running the huddles, but ideas for topics for lean to bring up. So we, like Jake Pardoon was saying, the first thing we would say is, all right, ask everybody what their input is. Do they have any corrective items for safety? And then here's a lean concept that you can talk about in your morning training. And so we did that for a while. I don't know, you guys, did it work? Did it not work? I mean, that was one thing that we tried to do to sustain the culture, make sure we were all doing the same messages.
Even in the last week of where we are right now, we are still doing that. We're still asking the same questions because consistency is the key. As long as we can stay consistent and we maintain that level of understanding, openness, honesty, integrity, as long as we maintain that, then we become a consistent force running through everyone. And then it's something that they can rely on. Everyone knows we have a safety meeting, a huddle, and at that huddle, we ask the same questions. And sometimes, there are no issues, but other times there are major issues.
Yeah.
And it becomes an open discussion for a few minutes that everyone's involved in.
Very good. Another thing with the communication cycle, one of the reasons a 5-minute daily huddle with all people on site is super top notch. And is because there's a communication cycle where everybody knows what's going on every day. So, and this has taken different shapes at different times. Sometimes, like Jake Pardoon, he's running the whole site right now. He knows all the items that we have to cover. Back when we had 4 superintendents on site, and the owner would say, hey, watch out for this stop sign, or somebody else has this delivery, or blah, blah, blah. Basically there's somebody coordinating the overall stuff. We would send each other texts that night before to say, hey, these are the topics for tomorrow's huddle. And it was all there, and it was ready for everybody to go for the next day. And so we go down the list, and we'd say, okay, what does everybody think? What are the safety topics from yesterday? And oh, by the way, here's the 15 things that we garnered from the day before that we all need to know about. So it became a communication cycle that our owner, quite frankly, appreciated, because if they told us, then everybody in the workforce knew the next day, and we had it under control.
Well, and I'll just add, there's been numerous times where the owner's rep has come on site. We've had the building manager come on site and ask questions about anyone on site, and they knew the right answer. They knew, hey, how can our building manager would want to go up to level 4, and he'd say, well, how do I get up there? And everyone on site knew, okay, well, level 3 is shut down and level 2 is shut down on the stairs. You'll need to take the south stair instead of the north, or whatever. And everyone across the board knew that.
Yeah, very, very cool.
As the site dynamic changed, it is the best way to communicate across to everybody, because as we constrained areas, we changed access, we closed access, one spot, opened another spot, had limited for certain days. It just was a great way of communicating that. And even when we were split up into 4 or 5 separate meetings, it was still a way that as those texts came out, we had general items that needed to come out so that everyone knew. So that you didn't get those phone calls. You didn't have to spend that time. We're trying to be lean. You have to spend that time trying to explain to someone where they were, where they need to be, or how they need to go. And it just freed up most of our time to do what we were supposed to be doing.
So what you're saying is, Jake, is that we were able to kill two kills with one bird.
Yeah. There's a Chuck Norris joke for you. I love that. So these are some of the things that we did to maintain the culture. The other thing I would say is that every foreman that came on site, we gave them the book 2 Second Lean and asked them to read it. I would say 60% of them did, and it made a big difference. That was the first part of converting them to the process. And then the other one, if you really want to sustain, people trying to do lean, make sure they don't give up, have them just keep trying and reinforce their education in lean. Try the 90-minute lean core training that's offered. It usually takes about 3 hours. You got to do it in two sessions because you'll pause and talk about it. But that lean core training, if you give it to the foreman, leadman, actually we gave it to a lot of people. We did a number of sessions. They go in there and say, oh, now I know why you control deliveries that way. Oh, now I know where your one-piece flow schedule came from. Oh, that's why you guys talk about everything being on wheels. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Oh. And they really get just a good education. And I think it's a conversion tool, converting them to the right way of doing things, to a lean process. And we did that throughout. And so, this is not an inclusive list. It's not what we just talked about isn't extensive, but these are just some of the things that we did to try and keep the culture. And it really was a day in, day out type maintenance. It wasn't easy. In my opinion, it will never stick without constant maintenance and upkeep. We have to keep training people. We have to keep talking to people on a daily basis. We have to keep reinforcing behaviors. We have to hold the line. We have to reinforce rules. We have to do all these wonderful things. And so anything else that you guys want to say? I mean, we really tried hard, didn't we?
I just wanted to add to what you were just talking about. I think one of the big questions in my mind is like, why did we have so much participation on site? Because I've been on other projects where you ask a question like Jake was saying, it is crickets, and they just kind of look at you with a deer in the headlights look. And I think what you were talking about is the lean core training, and with us getting them to read 2-second lean, what that did is it told them the why.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like to, although some don't like to blindly follow you, not knowing, give me a reason why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Tell me why. And I actually had quite a few people tell me that. The reason, we'd ask them like, well, why is this work, and why are you excited to be here? Why, we'd ask them the why, and a lot of their answers were, because you guys are telling us how and what and why we're doing this, instead of everyone just like on other projects, they get their foot put down and told that you're going to do it like this. Although we did draw a line in the sand, and as a project team, we brought a lot of the trade partners in and asked them at the start of the project how we wanted to manage these processes. We all knew we were going to do them. It was just how and to implement them. And it made it so I think that was another key to our success.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see you on the next podcast where we talk about cleanliness and organization.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.